And here we go with the first Gate Crash pack. Our rare is Merciless Eviction, one of the few ways to remove all creatures from the battlefield in this format. It is a 6 mana rare though, which I think is just too expensive. It's kind of difficult to make use of these symmetric effects, and especially in a fast format like Gate Crash Limited, I don't want to pay 6 mana for a Wrath effect, basically. I think the better cards in this pack are probably Dimir Keyrune, Sky Knight Legionnaire, and then we have some solid cards in Disciple of the Old Ways, Balustrade Spy, and Ivy Lane Denizen. Overall, the power level isn't too great here. I think that Dimir Keyrune serves a nice role in certain Dimir decks, simply because you have something to encode your Cypher spells onto, but Sky Knight Legionnaire is one of the premium commons for Boros, and I think it's by far the best card of this pack. And of course there's no Boros cards, but that doesn't bother us in the slightest. We have Aetherise, Urban Evolution, and Gruul Charm as the playable uncommons, and out of these I think that the foil Gruul Charm is by far the most powerful. I think that Gruul Charm is a card that you could easily first pick out of several packs, simply because the first and the third mortars are just so good. If your opponent plays a flyer, you have a very efficient removal spell, and otherwise you just have a way to win by making his entire team not able to block. I believe that the two most powerful cards in this pack are the Gruul Charm and Basilica Screecher, and I think I'm going to go with the Gruul Charm because I think it has just a little more raw power than the Screecher, which would be a fine pick as well. So currently the colors of the cards we are picking aren't really relevant, and it's really between these two cards. Aetherise I don't think is very good. I think it's pretty bad if you have to play it, because if your opponent is somewhat competent, then it's not going to be great most of the time. Next up, these are the packs where we are getting a little bit more information. So we see that there is a rare and a common missing, if we discount the possibility of a common of a foil card having been in the pack. The best cards I feel like are Warmind Infantry, Croconera, Ivy Lane Denizen, and Executioner Swing. I'm not the biggest fan of Nimbus Swimmer and Thrall Parasite. I think that the extort creatures that actually come with a body are just better than Thrall Parasite. And Nimbus Swimmer is somewhat awkward because it only becomes good for once you have 5 mana, and that's a whole lot in this format. Now, my pick here is Croconera. I think it's better than Infantry and Ivy Lane Denizen in the dark. In some decks where you know that you're going to be very aggressive, the Infantry is actually better, and a 3-drop is just better than a 4-drop in general in this format, just like 2-drops are usually better than 3-drops. The alternative would be Executioner Swing, but that's just from a power level perspective, that's not the card I want to pick to go into Orzhov. Now, another interesting pack. There's an Ogre Slumlord, and in the beginning of the format people were first picking this card, but it has dropped quite a bit in people's appreciation, and I totally understand that, because it just has no immediate effect on the battlefield, and it's quite a clunky card. I've really not been impressed by the Slumlord. And so let's talk about powerful cards. I think that the best cards here are probably maybe the Confessor and then the blue cards, with Frilled Oculus being amazing in Simic, Keymaster Rogue being good in almost all blue decks, and Incursion Specialist I like to pick up just for its ability. I'm going to go with the Frilled Oculus here, because when in doubt you want the 2-drops, and if you end up in Simic, then the Oculus is going to be the best option for us. It's not that much worse than Incursion Specialist in a non-green deck either. So the mediocre Orzhov cards keep continuing, but yeah, so far I haven't really seen a reason to move into black-white, simply because there wasn't really a card that stood out to me as being really worthy of picking so far. Here we have another mediocre pack, so the packs haven't been great for us. I think that the most powerful cards are Dimir Charm and Bomber Core, and that Righteous Charge, well, could could be picked as well, simply because it's just good in creature-heavy white decks. I'm going to go with the removal here, even though the red card does fit a little bit better with the picks I have so far. I just think that going by power level still is probably what we want to be doing. So this is interesting. There's a Wojciech Halberdier still in the pack, and we are 5 picks deep, so most people have had a chance to pick something here. The Halberdiers do come in the same print run as Wojciech Skyjack Legionnaire, I think it's called, or something like that. And that makes it unclear if Boros is really open, but the Halberdiers is easily first pickable out of a lot of packs, and I think it still being in the pack is a nice sign that Boros might be the guild that we want to draft. And here, that's a rather late Disciple of the Old Ways. Massive Raid is a removal spell, but not one that's high up on my priority list. There's also Prophetic Prism, which can be used to fix colorful decks, make colorful decks work. However, despite this conjunction of colorful gold cards, I'm not looking to draft a 3 or 4 color deck. I'm still trying to find a guild and solidify what I'm doing. And here I'm going to go with the Disciple because I just think it's the more powerful card as compared to Massive Raid. Next up, there's a Miming Slime, next to not much else. All of these cards aren't what I want to see in my main deck, even though I've certainly had to play all of them, I have to say. So Miming Slime, potentially a card that interacts well with Blood Rush and is okay in Gruul. It's not a great card, but it's okay. That's a late Ivy Lane Denizen from the pack we started with. Other notable cards are Riot Gear and Back in Apparition, but I feel like the green could be the color we want to be in, either Gruul or Simic. That's still open for debate. We have the Gruul Charm, we have 3 green cards for now, and a Frilled Oculus. So I'm feeling pretty good about us having solidified in green at least. Here I'm going to take Ruination Worm because I think that Clinging Anemones is close to unplayable. You almost never want it in your deck simply because the format is so aggressive, which means that defenders aren't bad in general, but you just get so much more out of creatures that are also able to attack, because drawing a defender and playing it just means that you won't be attacking with it. So it's bad half of the time if you want. It's a pretty late Verdant Haven, which does allow some splashes that would otherwise be unrealistic. And the only question is if we pick Verdant Haven over Primal Visitation at this point. It's easily possible that we are going to have a little trouble with the amount of playables. So Primal Visitation is always going to make our deck. But I think this is the point where we pick the Verdant Haven to just keep our options open in the best possible way. And these picks shouldn't really matter, but who knows. Let's just take the spells and see how it goes from here. I like Razor Tip Whip as a sideboard card against control-ish decks, and we still have the option of going Simic, where I like Hydroform as a sideboard card against Orzhov decks with a lot of 1/2 and 2/2 flyers. But overall, I would like to just continue picking green cards and see if I can get some powerful Gruul or Simic cards from here on. And here's pack 2 with Gift of Orzhov Charm and Holy Mantle, all in the same pack. So yeah, that's good for white drafters, for white-black drafters. Also another Basilica Guards, but the cards that are interesting for us are here in the left side. There's Ember Beast, Slaughterhorn, Frilled Oculus, and Shamble Shark. And if I had to order them by power level, I would probably put the Shamble Shark first, and then it's Slaughterhorn, followed by Frilled Oculus. Simply because Frilled Oculus can usually be picked up later. Now, the thing is that even if we discount the Dimir and Boros cards, that we still don't know if we are going to be in Simic or in Gruul. With basically only the Frilled Oculus pulling us into Simic and the Gruul Charm pulling us into Gruul. So I think that our safest bet is to pick the Slaughterhorn here, because we know we are going to play it. And it's not unlikely that one of the Simic cards or the Ember Beast wields, I think probably we can expect maybe the Filled Oculus to table. I would expect Simic drafters to value the Shamble Shark higher than the Oculus. That's what I would do, at least. Now, this is interesting. There's another Miming Slime, but we already have one, and we haven't picked up too many Blood Rush creatures yet. Also, Blood Rushing and Miming Slime kind of means that you have to be on the offensive, which is something that's not very easy if you only have one or two drops at this point. And that's counting the Filled Oculus, which would mean not playing greens, not playing red. So we really have to find cards to put into our 2-drop slot here, which is why I'm not looking to pick up Charger or Miming Slime at this point. Cards I like out of this pack are Drake-Wing Krasis and Gruul Rage Beast. Even though the Rage Beast costs 7, it does have a very, very high impact on the board. However, I think that you can't underestimate the amount of games that you lose simply because you have an uncastable 7-drop in your hand. And I really don't like the clunky decks in this format, which is why I'm going to go with Drake-Wing Krasis. I think it's just so much better than the green cards here that picking a Simic card that we might not play potentially is going to be better for us. Now, we get punished somewhat because Ground Assault is the strongest card in the pack, which would mean that Gruul is maybe where we want to be. I'm going to hide the black and the white, and that should give us a better idea of where we are right now. We basically have 2 Simic cards and only 1 Gruul Charm. The Ruination Worm isn't really amazing. So it's either between Ground Assault and losing out on the blue creatures, or just picking the Cloudfin Raptor, trying to go into Simic. Now, I think that the Cloudfin Raptor is better for several reasons, and one of them is that while it's nice to have a Gruul Charm, it's the most important thing in this format is having creatures, and that includes 2 and 3 mana creatures. So I'm really hesitant to drop 2 of my best creatures, and I don't really care about spells all that much. I hope that makes some sense. And we immediately get a pack that doesn't really offer much for us. The Primordial is just as expensive as Gruul Rage Beast with a much lesser effect, so I'm never going to put those in my deck. Maybe in a Greenside Watcher, Verdant Haven control deck, but even then it's just not an amazing creature. So we have Greenside Watcher beside nothing else here. We did cut green quite heavily, so I suppose nobody else wants these. And it looks like both Simic and Gruul are reasonably open, which we see by this pack as well. 2 nice green 4-drops, a Leyline Phantom, Shamble Shark, and Homing Lightning. So maybe we are regretting the decision to abandon the red cards a little bit now, but as long as we are getting powerful 2-drops like Shamble Shark, I feel like we aren't in too bad of a shape. This pack is interesting because it has Incursion Specialist and Gridlock, 2 cards that do very different things, but I like the Specialist more than others, especially in conjunction with Burst of Strength. Gridlock is nice because it's almost unparalleled in what it can potentially do, and Ivy Lane Denizen is potentially powerful in this deck. It has 3 toughness, which is good with Evolve. We already have one, so we could just build an Ivy Lane Denizen deck. However, I think that 2-drops are just so much better than 4-drops that I would always pick the Specialist rather than the Denizen. And while Gridlock is a fine card, I don't really want to worry about spells or finishers at this point because I'm really lacking with my curve, lacking behind in my curve, and yeah, I want to boost that a little bit. Here we have a Disciple of the Old Ways that has gotten significantly worse now that we are probably not playing any red sources. We might splash for Gruul Charm, and then we get the First Strike activation as a bonus, but that's not our priority right now. Which is why I'm going to take the Simic Flux Mage. I'm not the biggest fan because it is rather slow compared to what some other stuff in the format that's very realistic, but it should work very well in our deck. So this is a rare occurrence of me picking up a 3-drop rather than a 2-drop. That's another very nice pack. Totally Lost, Burst of Strength, Metropolis Sprite, and Zoroark Swine are all great cards, and I think we have the difficult choice between Metropolis Sprite and Burst of Strength here. I really like Burst of Strength, and it's kind of good with a lot of the cards we have, but passing up on a 2-mana evasive creature is pretty difficult. I think that at most draft tables you can get Burst of Strength later, and maybe we can get one in the 3rd pack. But people have realized how good this card is, so that might be a gamble that's not paying off. Here I think that Shadow Slice is a card we could pick to potentially splash, but it's probably safer to just hate draft the Holy Mantle. Holy Mantle just makes for some non-interactive games that you basically can't win if you aren't racing very effectively, and I don't really like to play against it, so let's take that out. Here we have the Gruul Guildgate for the potential splash, but if there's a strong card like Scapland Charger in the pack, I don't really see a reason to not pick a spell here. It's a nice little late Spire Tracer, which is very good with the Denizen, and just a great card overall, I've found out. And it does get better with Burst of Strength, which we don't have yet, but hopefully that will be corrected in the 3rd pack. Forced Adaptation is nice, but I like Hydroform better as a sideboard option, as I said, against Order of Decks, for example. And that already concludes pack 2, so let's see what's going to happen in pack 3. And here we go, a nice pack for Boros with Firerain Avenger and Fire Fist Striker, both in the pack. Black gets some removal options, and we are looking at Rust Scarab, Sage's Row Denizen, and Pit Fight, and that is a pretty clear Pit Fight, I feel like. It would be nice to have a Rust Scarab, maybe it wields, sometimes it does, but we have sufficient amount of creatures and high toughness creatures that we should be able to use Pit Fight, and Simic is usually happy about some ways to instantly remove some troublesome creatures, so it's not my favorite pack, and I'm not overly happy about Pit Fight, but things could have been much worse, so I'm not going to complain. Some very nice cards here as well, sadly not in our colors, so that's basically too late to pick up any of these, I feel like, and Bane Broker being the worst of them, the only realistic card to splash for us, so this pack is pretty much a blank. There's Spire Tracer, Adaptive Snapjaw, and Last Thoughts in Simic colors, so I feel like we are almost forced to just pick the Spire Tracer here simply because there aren't any other options, which is really bad. I would love to have a Burst of Strength in this pack, but I could hate draft True Fire Paladin or Angelic Skirmisher, but I don't feel like doing that at this point. Hopefully we don't lose to the Angel. And the one advantage of staying open for so long during pack 1 is usually that you are getting good cards in pack 2 and pack 3, because not only is your right neighbors not in the same guild, but also the whole table shouldn't be drafting your guild. That's the theory, at least. So this pack is looking a little better. There's another Verdant Haven which we can take note of, so potential splash cards with the help of the Haven are a possibility. But here we just want the second Frilled Oculus, and maybe table one of the creatures, where it would be nice, but otherwise I'm happy with that pick as it is. So things are looking up. We are getting the choice between two spells here, Hands of Binding and Burst of Strength, and Burst of Strength isn't going to wheel out of this pack. That's almost guaranteed. There's too many bad cards, and we are already at pick 4. So if we want that Burst of Strength, we probably have to pick it now. The question is if it's better than Hands of Binding in the deck we are currently drafting. We do have 2 Spire Tracers, a Raptor, and some creatures that are just difficult to block. So Hands of Binding is a pretty nice card, but I think that Burst of Strength is just more powerful in general. Both the +1/+1 counter and the untap ability are very powerful. It interacts nicely with several cards that we already have, for example, the Pit Fight or the Miming Slime. And yeah, I think the instant trick is better than the sorcery speed removal, and that's in quotes because you can't be guaranteed that it's actually removal. So yeah, a pick that I wouldn't have done like that earlier in the formats, but I think that I've grown to appreciate Burst of Strength a whole lot. So here is Croconora, Hands of Binding, and Keymaster Rogue. I would love to have a Keymaster Rogue. I think it's a card that this deck could make great use of. But Croconora is just more powerful, and it's not slightly more powerful. It's just a whole level more powerful, I think. Yeah, I don't think it's close. And we might wheel a blue card out of this pack. It's not really likely to happen, but one can dream. And that's another Ivy Lane Denizen. I think that's a very easy pickup. I've talked about the Primordial a great deal, and a second Denizen is very nice with the 2 Spire Tracers and all the green creatures we picked up. It's going to make combat very, very easy for us. Here it's Ivy Lane Denizen number 3, or a Tower Defense, which I'm not sure we would main deck. I think that going all in on the Denizens is actually quite a nice plan. They should get better in multiples, even though they cost 4. Now we can probably just round things up. I don't like Scatter Arc very much. I think that keeping open Scatter Arc just for them to Blood Rush or play a play a creature or something like that, it's pretty awful. It's an okay sideboard card, but we could also just take the Act of Treason so that we don't get beaten by it. On the other hand, we don't have huge creatures that are prone to getting acted, and we aren't playing any Leyline Phantoms at this point, so I think we might just play take the sideboard card here. That's a blue Denizen, which we probably aren't going to play simply because it's not going to be great in our deck. I don't have the exact count of playables, so we might be forced to run it. Otherwise, I would probably hate draft the Devour Flash. On the other hand, that shouldn't be amazing against us either. Here it's a pretty easy Last Thoughts, which we might even play. It has some nice applications in certain matchups where you don't expect people to have a lot of removal spells, but the game go longer for some reason. So for example, if you have an opponent that's on Orzhov, Extort, but doesn't have a lot of spells, then you can just put this on a Spire Tracer and yeah, draw a couple of cards. Of course, Kingpin's Pet changes that, but it's really an okay card. I'm going to pick a second Verdant Haven here. Don't see a reason to pick the Guild Mage. Even though we are probably not playing it, it does give us some options. Here there is Bioshift or just Confession. We have one of these, so let's take the Bioshift. And that could actually be playable with triple Denizen and Burst of Strength and some Evolve creatures, but let's hope that that's not going to be necessary. Okay, onto the deck building. Let's see what we have. Not a lot of gold cards, kind of unfortunate. And quite a lot of good creatures, which isn't really surprising, considering that we pick them up quite highly. So this is the simplest build of the deck with 20 creatures, and the Miming Slime being virtually a creature as well. We have Skepta, Charger, and Slaughterhorn as potential spells, and that's good because otherwise we would just be sitting there playing a creature each turn, which isn't the worst. And with Evolve, it basically makes sense to play a lot of creatures. With Ivy Lane Denizen, it makes sense to play a lot of creatures, so I'm not unhappy about the looks of this. I think that all green creatures are basically must-plays with triple Denizen, and I like how this deck is going to function from the looks of it. So I'm not going to play the Anemones. We could consider one of the 4-mana spells here. Verdant Haven isn't necessary because we aren't splashing or ramping into anything, and I'm also not looking to splash a Gruul Charm or anything like that, especially given that we have flyers of our own. I think that Hydroform is more of a sideboard card, and Quartz Confession isn't isn't what I want to be doing. Even though we might draw some cards of it, I think that having a low curve and all of these cards should be better. Now, the card I'm actually considering the most is Bioshift, just as another way to blow out people in combat. It is a pretty hefty price to remove the creatures from another of your creatures or another one of your creatures, but sometimes you can also do it in response to a combat trick or a removal spell, and it's not a burst of strength, but it has similar applications. Now, when we put this in here, we are at 24 cards, but given how low our curve is, we might actually just run 16 lands and be fine with it. We almost never need more than 4 lands in play, and even if we don't draw the 4th one for a while, we can still drop cards for a while. We do have some mana sinks in Frilled Oculus and Simic Flux Mage, our late game cards being that and the 4-drops, but I think this looks like a 16 land deck to me. With such a low curve, we shouldn't really be scared of being screwed. So the question is if we need more green than blue sources, but I think that I just want to play 8/8, even though we have an overwhelming majority of green cards. I want to see a forest and an island in each of my opening hands. So if I were to run 17 lands, it would be 9 forests, 8 islands. If it's like this, I'm tending towards 8 and 8, which is kind of bad if I want to play multiple green spells in one turn, but there aren't actually that many that I can do. Of course, Slaughterhorn and Spire Tracer count in that regard, but I won't have the mana early on to play Disciple of the Old Ways and Croconaur, for example. And then I've already drawn 5 lands, 2 of which should be forest. And if they aren't, then I have to play accordingly and play my green 2-drop earlier, follow up with a blue drop, something like this. So even though I would like an additional green source, I think that the Bioshift should add more to what this deck here is trying to do or trying to accomplish. So let's try running 16, and if we feel like we are missing green too often or having trouble with our overall mana count, then we can see what we can cut for, well, if we cut the Bioshift for an additional forest, for example. We are also going to be on the draw half of the time, and I feel that on the draw we can definitely play only 16 lands, and on the play we might want this 17th one. Okay, let's see how that goes.